So on one of my runs of the new raid, I was lucky enough to get the raid exotic Conditional Finality. This is definitely one of the more interesting raid exotics we've got, and a pretty useful one too. Conditional Finality is an exotic shotgun that is both stasis and solar and goes in the kinetic slot. The kicker? It's a double barrel, so if you ever wanted to live your Doom fantasies in Destiny, this is for sure the weapon for you. First, let's take a look at the weapon's perks. For the barrel perk, we have Shortened Barrel, greatly improves handling at the cost of range and stability. We have Alloy Magazine for the magazine perk, which gives you a bonus to your reload when the magazine is empty. And we have Textured Grip, which greatly increases handling and slightly decreases stability. Then we have the exotic perks. We have Split Decision, Dual Barrel split into stasis and solar damage, and Paracausal Pellets. Landing nearly all stasis pellets will freeze targets, and landing nearly all solar pellets will ignite targets. While the perks here are interesting, and honestly Shortened Barrel makes me wonder if we'll see this barrel perk on other weapons in the future, it's really the exotic perks that make this weapon something of a monster. Now, a couple of things to clear up. The description of this weapon isn't completely honest with us. It says it holds 5 rounds in the mag, and it most certainly does not. This is of course a double-barreled shotgun, so it only holds 2 shells at a time. It says it fires at 165 rounds per minute, and it most definitely does not do that. The raw performance of this shotgun is really more like an aggressive frame shotgun with extremely high handling. Now the barrels alternate between elements. The first shot is stasis, the second one is solar, and one kind of nice detail is you can see the stasis crystals and flames on the sides of the shotgun disappear as you fire each barrel. Landing most of your pellets on stasis will freeze a target, landing most of them on solar will ignite a target, and this is what makes Conditional Finality so potent. As a first for one of these videos, we're going to be talking about this weapon in PvE before we talk about PvP, since there's a larger discussion to be had on the PvP side. In PvE, this weapon has a number of uses. With both the freezing and ignition effect, this weapon is perfect for hammering champions and mini-bosses. Between the solar ignitions and stasis shatter effects of this weapon, Conditional Finality is a hard counter to unstoppable champions. With some mini-bosses, you can just spam the shotgun and there isn't really much they can do about it. On barrier or overload champs, one thing you can do is fire the stasis shot to freeze them, hit them with something like a grenade or ability, immediately reload, then hit them with the stasis shot again to freeze them again. Then just rinse repeat until they're dead. This is definitely more effective against barriers than overloads, since overloads can teleport, but if you're fast enough it can still work. But you have to have the timing down pretty much perfectly on overloads, so for overloads you probably want to look for something else. This weapon is also fantastic for just cleaning out large groups of adds, especially the ignition effect. You fly into a large group of adds and you can clean them out pretty damn quickly. Plus, it's also not a bad weapon for DPS. That's not to say it's the king here, it's certainly not as good as other more meta options, rockets and such, but still not necessarily bad since the repeated shattering and igniting of a single target will actually put out some pretty serious damage. I did a quick test on the Grasp of Avarice Ogre here, and I was only using a Well of Radiance, no mods to increase damage or anything of that sort, and I was surprised at how much damage it was actually doing. So if you're in a raid and you're not running an exotic heavy, and you already have 1 or 2 people running Witherhoard, and it's a raid where the boss may be in a spot where you can hit them with a shotgun, it's probably a pretty decent backup weapon. So for PvE, it's actually a pretty solid choice. In PvP though, it's more of a mixed package. Shotguns in general are in kind of a weird place right now. They've been rebalanced many times. Over the last year, they really struggled for a long time. Their one-shot kill ability was inconsistent at best, and you'd usually have to follow up with a melee. Of course, there were outliers such as Time Lost Found Verdict with opening shot, but outside of that, most people were running lightweight shotguns such as the 7th Seraph CQC or Wastelander M5. Lightweights didn't do any better with one-shot kill consistency, but they had far superior handling compared to their counterparts, and since you had to follow up with a melee most of the time anyway on all shotgun archetypes, having the higher handling of a lightweight just made more sense to a lot of people. Now, last season, shotguns saw something of a rework. They all received fixed pellet spreads unique to their archetype, and this changed shotguns completely. Probably the biggest shakeup here was that precision frames became top dog overnight because their unique pellet spread meant that at the right range you could cover a Guardian head to toe in buckshot. On top of that, unlike aggressive frame shotguns, certain precision frame shotguns can still roll with quick draw, and precision frames will generally have better handling than an aggressive frame anyway. Plus, precision frames also tend to have better range. So while aggressive frames may still hit harder, precision frames still do more than enough damage to get the job done and can roll with better all-around stats than an aggressive. So after the rework, precision frames felt better on an exponential level, aggressive frames felt slightly better, lightweights felt noticeably worse, and rapid fires haven't been worth anything in years anyway. So where does conditional finality stand in this? Well, it's a mixed bag to be sure. I'm sure one of the things you noticed about this shotgun was its stats, extremely high handling, but dogshit range. Now of course, high handling is always a good thing to have on a shotgun. If someone's trying to ape you with another shotgun or a glaive, the ability to quickly whip out your shotgun and put them down is invaluable. The problem is that the extremely low range on this weapon means that you'll pretty well have to be within fisting range to get the one-shot kill. On top of that, shotguns in general still struggle with consistency. There's a reason shotguns with opening shot generally feel better than shotguns without it. There are times when your shotguns will just whiff and your would-be target sends you to the respawn screen while you scratch your head wondering what the hell just happened. This can be frustrating to be sure, but conditional finality does have one very niche use inside of PvP. This shotgun can shut down supers, and I mean completely shut them down. Now this isn't to say if someone pops a golden gun that you should immediately whip this out and straight line them because that would be stupid. But this shotgun can kill people out of bubbles, out of wells, and if you can ambush someone out of roaming supers as well. The ignition effect of the second shot is more useful for this, but the stasis one can be helpful for sure as well, if for no other reason than to just slow them down. Now this is a very high risk, very high reward strategy. It will require you to enter an enemy well or bubble and get very close to roaming supers. But if you can successfully get close enough to get those shots off, it will have no problem shutting down a super. Now of course you have to be extremely careful doing this. Most players in a super aren't just going to let you walk up to them and shotgun them. You will have to catch them off guard and in very close quarters. Like I said, very high risk for a very high reward, so try this at your own risk. But this does offer some unique utility. If you can get the drop on someone in a well, a bubble, or in a roaming super with this weapon, it could actually turn the tide of something like a comp match or a trials match. That being said, that's kind of where the usefulness of this shotgun ends. There are for sure other shotguns that will just be more useful as a whole due to having higher range and opening shot. While this might be a good last-ditch weapon, something you could switch to in a trials match if you know the enemy team's going to pop a bubble next round, there are still shotguns that are just better at being shotguns. Weapons like Fractithist, Matador, Time Lost Found Verdict, so on and so forth. That being said, watching the shatter or ignition in PvP is definitely extremely satisfying, and if nothing else, it's just fun to run around like a moron and troll with it. Which means for all my Titan mains, this is definitely the gun for you. As a side note, one other very niche use for this weapon is it's actually shockingly very good in Gambit. You can fly into a group of ads, get an ignition off, and watch the motes just rain down. Plus, this thing absolutely hammers those high-value targets as well. I know most of us probably aren't Gambit mains, but it's something to keep in mind anyway. So Conditional Finality, maybe not the most insane gun in the game, but a very unique and extremely fun one to play with. New weapons really don't always need to be insanely strong or super broken. Sometimes just having them be a good time is good enough. This is definitely worth doing your weekly runs for because it's an absolute blast to use. And remember, completing certain challenges in the raid will actually increase your chances of getting this weapon, so keep that in mind during your runs. But that's all for me today, Guardians. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, do me a favor and let me know in the comments. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe with the bell icon. It really does help me out. As always, let me know your thoughts on this weapon and if you've been lucky enough to get it yet too. But for now, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.